Assalamu alaikum everyone. Thank you very much for joining us on this 50s series of Startup Talks. Today is the 51st episode, and once again, this one is very special. I'm truly honored to hold this person and host her on the talk here today. The startup ecosystem has developed quite a bit in Pakistan. And a lot of people, a lot of organizations have played a key role. But if we are to point out individuals who've done the most and gone beyond their capacity, I believe she is the person. And I'm glad that I'm hosting Jehan Ara today. Truly honored that she's here. Of course, I cannot do justice to her intro, but she's done some amazing piece of work with starting with Pasha, with Plan 9. She's on the board of several companies in Pakistan. She's also on the task force for IT and telecom, and currently she's the founder at Katalyst Labs, the accelerator. Assalamu alaikum, Jehan. How are you doing?
Walaikum assalam, Taimur. I'm fine, thank you. And thank you for inviting me for this talk.
That's great, Jehan. It's my pleasure. Sorry about the husky voice. Maybe it's the seasonal or whatever is going on in Karachi. Sorry about that.
Yeah, a lot of people are down with it.
Yeah. So, Jehan, we'll try and shift a bit away from all the hustle bustle that you go through every day, right, with regards to your work. Let's talk about you first. I mean, you've been at it for so long. Must have had lots of difficulties being a woman and venture into the tech space and traveled the world over, did hell of a lot of things. To be honest, it's difficult to keep track of them. What's the journey been like?
Oh, it's been fun. You know, Taimur, I've always believed that you should only do something that you are passionate about. And I'm really passionate about the tech space here in Pakistan, the entrepreneurial space, and the amazing work that is being done by so many young people and some older people as well. And so talking about it, promoting it all around the world was more pleasure than work. And so when you look at something that you're doing as being something that is personal to you, then it becomes interesting and you can do as many hours as possible. So I work day and night and I enjoy it. People say, you must be exhausted. And I say, yes, physically, perhaps that happens, but mentally it just revives me and continues to push me to do more and more. As far as being a woman in Pakistan is concerned, I know there are many, many challenges. I guess I've been lucky because I have had nothing but support from a lot of people, including my family, including my colleagues, including a lot of people, young people from within the community. So there has never been a challenge that I have not been able to get beyond, simply because all that support that's available has helped me. And so if I can support anybody else, I try and do that. And I know there are limitations to time and limitations to, we are in different cities. So some people, like this morning, I had a visit from 3 young men from Faisalabad. And they wanted to talk about their work. They wanted to get some input from me. They wanted to give me a book that they want me to review. And just listening to them and seeing what they have been able to accomplish all on their own was just so amazing. So I meet such people almost on a daily basis, and they inspire me. So the journey has been really very, very interesting for me. And I hope that I will continue to do what I can to support the community for as long as I'm able to.
Shani, that's great. Now, you've been involved for so long. You were in Hong Kong before. How was the transition from Hong Kong to Pakistan?
So yes, I was born in Karachi, but I grew up in Hong Kong because my father was with the National Bank of Pakistan in Hong Kong for many years. And so most of my growing up years were in Hong Kong. And I think that city gave me a lot because the Chinese, especially the Chinese in Hong Kong, are very disciplined. They value time, and everything they do, they enjoy. So I think those are things that I learned from that city. The transition to Pakistan, I thought would be hard, but it wasn't, because when you want to do something and you have at least a few people around you who work with you on it, then the work keeps you going. And I moved back because of my parents, and I was very happy that I did, because both of them, my mother was very ill and needed someone. My siblings are all over the world. So I decided, okay, I can work anywhere. So I moved with them to Pakistan, and I was so happy that I was with them during the time that they needed someone. And until the day they died, I was by their side. So despite the travels and all of that, I had to keep coming back, and I was here for support. I have a very nice network of friends whom I have known for over 30 years. And so they are here. So the transition was not difficult, because if you have friends in a city, if you have work that you like, and if you have your parents here, how can it be difficult? Yes, there are problems. The major problem was, of course, being transportation, which for Hong Kong, it's very easy. You could travel on a bus or a tram or a ferry.
Yeah.
Here, you need your own car. Otherwise, it's impossible. So I saved up enough money before I moved here to buy a small Mehran, which I started with. And it was it was the thing that kept me going, because wherever I needed to go, I wasn't dependent on someone to drive me. And you remember, Taimur, this was pre the Kareem and Uber days, where there wasn't any kind of transportation available. So yeah, I think the key problem was that. Otherwise, once I got here, I started making relationships. That was another thing. People who have lived in Pakistan had a lot of relationships already with people who they had studied with, people they had started work with. I had to start afresh. But I think, people are generally very helpful if you tell them what it is you actually need from them, and then you are able to help them as well in return. Don't just take. You need to be able to give a certain amount to them, and then you find that those relationships become stronger over time. So now, I moved back in the mid 90s. Now Karachi is what I call home. Pakistan, I travel all across Pakistan. I still think of Hong Kong as my home. I keep going back almost on a regular basis. I have a brother there, so it's important for me to go. And that city still, inspires me. But that's why I'm lucky. I have two homes. I have Hong Kong and I have Karachi.
Okay. One thing that you mentioned that's really appealing, it's actually you've been very lucky to have been with your parents at old age, right? That's an opportunity not a lot of people get, right?
That's true.
Especially with all this globalization happening. Now, Jihara, let's move on to the startup ecosystem. All right, coming on to, let's start with something critical, right? Taking a different angle to it. You've been watching it. You started off in the well before the days of Plan 9 and all of those things. When things really started to move on from small drops of water. Um, Today we've come to this stage, and still a lot of people argue that the the ecosystem lacks innovation. But before you answer that, for me, I think we've come a long, long way with regards to innovation. As long as I don't have to go pay bills, stand in a queue to pay bills, right? As long as I don't have to make one or two journeys to buy aloo tomato, right? My 12 years old son, who's homeschooled, he is way more advanced in his studies than I was at his age. For me, that is innovation. But what would you say? You've been looking at it so closely. What's the innovation been like?
So yes, I mean, it really depends on how you define innovation. There is innovation in terms of products and new technologies. There is innovation in the way that you deliver services. As you yourself said, you and I are able to buy books and groceries and what have you online now. We never used to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And I think pre-COVID, I didn't think I would ever do that. I liked the experience of walking into a shop and buying things, but once I started doing it, I realized that the convenience was something that I was looking for. And that, not being able to park outside a supermarket because parking is so difficult in places like Karachi. I found that when I shopped online, everything was delivered to my doorstep. Yes, the products you can say are not innovative because they've been done in other parts of the world. But they're still innovative as far as this country is concerned, as far as solving the problems that we face on a day-to-day basis. So whether it's delivering healthcare online, whether it's delivering education online, whether it's retail products and services, I think it's important that these things start to happen. And once the digitization increases and there is more of a customer base, I mean, the customer base has enlarged quite a bit. People, the number of people using digital for these services has increased, but it will increase more, as more and more people realize how to use apps, and they get access to mobile phones and they get access to good internet services. You will find that this number will increase and then innovation will start to happen for other things. So I've seen young people who are delivering services for people with hearing disabilities. There are people, there are young people who are being able to learn how to do a lot of things that they didn't know before because they're able to access it digitally. So this kind of education is very different from the education you get in schools. So if you're interested in something in particular, you can go and access it online. Maybe through a local product or maybe through an international product. That ability to have access is really something that I think a lot of people appreciate. And you will see that the number of women now getting involved. So I was talking to somebody and they said, well, women are only doing online products or services with connection with food or fashion. That's not true. There are a lot of women founders who are working on healthcare, who are working on education, key problems that this country faces, right? So if you're able to solve a problem that exists in this country using technology, I think that kind of innovation is also needed. So I'm quite impressed with the kind of work that a lot of young people are doing. They identify a problem, they know how to solve it, and then they go online and offer it as a service. It will take time to make sure that those services, become much more problem-free, because payments are still somewhat of a problem. So we're still dependent a lot on cash. And also, as you scale, there are problems that you didn't know about before. So you need to solve those problems. And then there are problems like for online shops, there are problems of returns. How do you handle that? So, when you're selling electronic gadgets and things like that, it then becomes more of a problem. Delivery is still, something that we need to tackle. So logistics and all of that, we need to figure it out. But that doesn't mean things are not happening. I totally agree with you that we've come a long way, but we need to travel a lot more on this journey to make it even much more impactful. And now look at government services. I mean, there are a lot of things you can do online. You can register a company. I did, which I never thought in the old days that was possible. You can now even open a bank account, I hear. I haven't tried that yet, but this is something very recent. So if you can open a bank account, if you can pay your bills, if you can do all sorts of things, I think technology is progressing and a lot more people will be able to use it. I know my housekeeper, my office boy, all of these people use a lot of these services and they figured it out, although they're not literate, they're not, you would call them technology illiterate. but smartphones allow them to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, it's unfortunate people don't realize it, but I think the young generation, especially the seeds coming from those under 30s, under the age of 30, right? That's actually where the true transformation is going to come, and I believe it's going to explode. Now, Jara, uh, women, like you said in your comment, that they have started to come forward, which is absolutely great, right? Being a father to a daughter, right? It's absolutely important for me, and this is something I hold close to heart. Uh, uh, in the startup space, it's a global phenomena, and of course, it's there in Pakistan too. W- Women, when you think of the VC space, the women founders, right? They don't have much exposure in the within the ecosystem. What do you think, in your opinion, should be done, right? And how people on individual basis, how organizations can play a key role and lead it from the front?
So you're absolutely right. When you start thinking of women founders, there are very few that you can identify simply because I think the women who are founders don't talk about themselves as much. They
Mhm.
don't blow their own trumpet. And so somebody else has to talk about them, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it is up to us as individuals, people who are in the startup space or people who are on the internet doing talks like this, or organizations whose responsibility it is to talk about women who are doing things that are impactful.
Mhm.
And I've seen many women out there who are working, as I said, in the areas of education, in the areas of social impact,
Mhm.
also, yes, food, fashion, all sorts of things. And they are creating employment,
Mhm.
they are making a difference, and they are also generating revenue.
Mhm.
And many of them, are totally not recognized. And
Yeah.
I think VCs tend to be a little hesitant
Mhm.
to invest in women founders.
Mhm.
I think the thinking is that, is this a hobby?
Yeah.
Is this really a business? Are they going to be able to scale?
Yeah.
All of those questions arise. But then you see women who have done it. So
Mhm.
whether it's Sehat Kahani, whether it's Udan, whether it's, Connect Here,
Yeah.
whether it's, founders who are together with male founders like Credit Book,
Yeah.
things like that. There are women founders there and they're doing amazing work. And I've been talking to some of them. I think it's our responsibility to project them
Mhm.
so that other women will be inspired.
Mhm.
Because, when they don't see women out there doing things,
Yeah.
then perhaps women in universities, colleges, and schools will be less inspired and they will think, oh, well, it's only men who create companies and not women.
Mhm.
So I think we need them out there as role models
Mhm.
so that other young women like your daughter can take inspiration and think about that as an option. So I think this is something individuals, organizations, government, everybody needs to do.
Mhm.
Some things are happening. There are organizations like banks, etc.
Mhm.
Standard Chartered has a women entrepreneurs initiative. There are certain governments who are promoting women entrepreneurs. So some things are happening, but not enough.
Mhm. Uh, Through you, I'd request you over here, right? You mentioned some people. You mentioned Connect here. Azima Dhanji is doing fantastic job. I'm actually speaking to her tomorrow on the platform,
Very good.
right?
Okay.
That's going to be a good chat. I'm actually looking forward to it. But I'd request you, right, as an initiative from my side, right? If you probably come across a lot more women in tech and women doing wonderful things, right? If you feel somebody wants to be needs to be featured on the platform and should be, right, I'd be happy to entertain them and highlight what they're doing. So this is I take this opportunity to request you if you
Sure,
recommend
sure.
people, right?
Thank you.
um, Now, Jahara, you had you've been through Pasha, right? You've been actively involved in advising on policy decisions, right? And you are also the founder of the accelerator Katalyst Labs. What's Katalyst Labs all about?
So, I founded and ran the Nest.io for more than 6 years, and we worked with almost 217, 218 startup
Mm-hmm.
companies.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them, of course, failed eventually, which many companies do. Some of them have continued to function, have created employment, have done a lot of interesting things.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, what next?
Yeah.
And there, after the launch of the Nest.io, there were the NICs that came into the space, and there have been a lot of incubators who have put through some startups in terms of incubation.
Mm-hmm.
But once they're incubated, what next? So there's nobody really to hold their hand and take them to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured Katalyst Labs needs to work on with companies that are out there who have proof that their model is working.
Mm-hmm.
They have some early revenue, they have some early customers. Now, to help them connect with mentors, to help them connect with investors,
Yeah.
so that now they can scale their startups.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole idea of Katalyst Labs, to work on acceleration rather than incubation.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a separate program, which is the Women Leadership Fellows Program.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I find that is very disappointing is that there are not even enough women business leaders in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Every time there's a conference or there is some sort of activity, the same 5 or 6 women are invited because nobody knows of the existence of others, and maybe they're just not enough.
Yeah.
So I figured if we start a leadership program, and there are a lot of women at management level, so mid-tier level, if we work with them and find out what is holding them back, is it the culture? Is it the organizations they work for?
Yeah.
Is it themselves? Because sometimes it is things within themselves that are holding them back. Something that a lot of women refer to as the imposter syndrome. Can I really do it? Do I have the confidence? And also some missing skills, perhaps. The lack of a network. Women lack networks. And that, I think, keeps them from getting access to opportunities. So the Women Leadership Fellows Program is meant to correct that problem. We've just graduated our first 18 women leaders, and it's amazing. Some fascinating young women who could be up there leading companies or starting their own
Yeah.
have not done it because of various reasons. And now they have a network they can work with. Also, we have introduced them to mentors, we've introduced them to leaders in the community, both men and women, whom they can reach out to if they need help in whatever they do. So that's very important to me. It's something that I feel very strongly about myself. And so these two programs, I think, are going to be what we are going to focus on at least for the next 2 or 3 years to see what happens. I strongly believe that if you are doing something, reassess after every couple of years whether it is still needed. So I thought incubation is no longer the thing to focus on, acceleration is, and then this part of the women leaders part is what is important. So that's why we're working on that now.
That's wonderful. The pointers that you mentioned, I just want to add another point to it. One stigma that they face day in, day out is what will others say, right? If they come into the spotlight, it's a phobia kind of thing that what will people say, what will my relatives say, what will my peers say, which is also something that they need to get over. Now, Jara, Pakistan broke so many records last year, right? सारे पहाड़ धड़म भड़म इधर उधर सब गिरा दिए सबने. There's a speculation that I'm not a speculator, by the way, but there is talk that we might go beyond 600 million. Some say 500 million, some say 900 million, right? Well, of course, there will be growth, but away from the figures, which segments in the ecosystem do you think are going to get the most traction, right? I'll tell you what I feel. I feel fintech will be the key player. But in your opinion, being an expert, being having first-hand look at things, what do you think is going to grow?
So I don't have a crystal ball either, but I agree with you, fintech, simply because there is so much work to be done in that area.
Yeah.
Fintech is definitely going to grow. I think quick commerce is again going to grow much more, simply because there's so many players in the market and there are many more that are coming up. And the convenience is something that people are looking for.
Yeah.
I think we haven't broken the barrier on edtech yet. Edtech needs a lot more work. Yeah, and healthcare, I think, is starting to become interesting.
Yeah.
So that's another area I believe will grow. And as people find that it is much easier to get health services at home, or at least get lab tests done at home and things like that, that's beginning to happen. Especially with COVID, you've seen that people are hesitant to go into hospitals. They're afraid that they might have exposure to the disease. So these kind of things, as you get used to them and as they become a little less expensive, because more traction means that you can take down the price of the service that you're offering. I think more people will then begin to access it. I've seen that the increase has already started to happen, but I think it'll be much more. So there will be growth definitely in fintech and different kind of new services that maybe you or I have not imagined yet. Young people who are in the space, there are a lot of diaspora who are coming back, who've seen things happen in other countries. And then definitely edtech and health tech I see growing as well.
Yeah. Education is something that has a great deal of potential. I believe it's the lack of hardware that is actually the true hindrance with regards to its growth and access to it. But with health tech, yeah, if there is more tech infusion with regards to extending services, something like Ivy Huck Russell, I don't know if you know her, from Bangladesh. She's done with Maya, right? It's an absolutely amazing thing that they've done. Now, looking at the lighter side of things, you've seen so many ups and downs in all these years in Pakistan, right? What has been one key incident that whenever you think of it today, you just laugh it off?
I laugh a lot, so it's very difficult to highlight one thing. But yeah, I mean, it's really impossible to think of one thing that makes me laugh. There are young people who walk in with jokes every day. And there are people that I engage with online. I'm a great user of social media, as you might have noticed. I get to know a lot of people online before I actually meet them much later. So yeah, there are things that happen that you laugh at that particular time, but you don't remember later on. So I really can't identify what has made me laugh. Mostly it is things that I have done that probably didn't work, that seems stupid later on. I tend to laugh at myself a lot because I think it's a good thing to do. It's a good exercise, not to take yourself too seriously. And although I take my work seriously, I think personally, if you laugh at yourself, then it makes other people that you're engaging with much more comfortable. And so I do that a lot, but no, I'm afraid I can't think of one incident that made me laugh. If I think of it, I'll tell you later.
Maybe you can, maybe it can be this one, that it's actually making you laugh, so that it's
yeah, maybe it's possible. No, there is. Okay, I don't know whether I laughed about it or not, but I do a lot of stuff online, and I booked a hotel room in San Francisco, and I was very tired at that time while I was booking the room. And when I got there, as I checked in, and they said, oh, your card is not accepting the payment. And I found that I had booked a room that was $1,500 that I thought was $150, but I had to pay for it because, it was prepayment.
Yeah.
But I then told them that I was only going to stay for one night, and all night I walked in the room it was a suite, and it was at the Four Seasons. So I walked around making use of every possible facility in that room. I don't know. I mean, I laughed about it afterwards. How stupid could I have been?
Yeah.
But, at that time, it wasn't a laughing matter. At that time, I was really, really, really very upset. And I lost a lot of money, which was personal money. Nobody else would pay for it. I would not ask anyone else to pay for my mistake, right? So, yeah, that's one thing that I can share.
चले, एक रात की खुशियां थोड़ी महंगी पड़ी, लेकिन खुशी तो
उसके बाद से careful रहती हूँ. It was a lesson.
चले, Jahara, we are almost coming to the end of time here, but before you go, I like comments on two things, right? First of all, what message do you have through this platform? People who are going crazy, doing crazy stuff, right? And what advice would you have for platforms like Startup Talks who are trying to bring about change and enabling the ecosystem?
So, two very important questions, I think.
Yeah.
For people who are trying to enter the ecosystem or already have and are trying to enact change, I think I would say just do it. Don't let people demotivate you. Yes, you will make mistakes. You will fall flat over some mistakes that you made, but get up, dust yourself off, and start again. Because, it is through mistakes that there is a lot of learning to be had. I've made mistakes. I've learned from them. So you can too. And don't let anyone tell you that it can't be done, that you are trying to be too ambitious. There's nothing that is too ambitious. Just do it, but do it at a step at a time, so that the mistakes that you make, you learn from and then carry on. So and I wish them all luck. They should all try and find a mentor if they can, so that there is somebody from the outside who looks at what they're doing and can give them advice. Now, it's not necessary to take that advice, but it's always good to have a second opinion on whatever it is that you're doing, right? So somebody you respect, somebody who has some experience in that particular area, it's always good to have a mentor. As far as Startup Talks, continue doing what you're doing. Try to project as many people as you can, because I think that is necessary not only for the startup ecosystem, but also for Pakistan, because not enough people outside Pakistan know how awesome our young people are, what great work is happening here. So good luck and continue to do what you do.
Chale. Thank you very much, Jahara. Thank you for your time. It was a real pleasure talking to you here today. Hopefully, inshallah ta'ala, अगर किस्मत में हुआ तो love to meet you in person, right? Maybe over a cup of coffee,
Absolutely.
right?
Sure.
And hopefully try and do something together in the future.
Absolutely.
Chale,
Thank you,
Jahara.
Taimur,
Thank
for
you
your
very much.
time. And
Thank you.
okay, take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.